Hi, my name is Taylor Parsons, and today I'm going to be discussing an article from the Wall Street Journal called Antisocial: Why New Communication Tools Aren't Catching On Faster at Work by Steve Rosenbush. This article basically talks about your old forms of communication versus your new forms of communication and how they are catching on, but not exactly as fast as everyone anticipated. So, first thing I would like to discuss with you are the old traditional forms of communication, such as email and phone calls. Now, email is typically what everybody in the business world uses to communicate with each other, but it's not really that ideal anymore. Email is subject to spam and junk mail and other bulk messages from tons of people that you don't actually even know how they ended up with your email. So it actually just ends up being more of a hassle to check your emails than anything else. You have to filter through all this other useless stuff. It's not actually instant. You send an email and you have to wait for the other person to get it, wait for them to respond, and then wait for that to get to you. So that's why it's not exactly considered ideal anymore. And then the other thing is phone calls. Now, phone calls are actually only effective if the other person answers. So if you're both in the office and you know you're both in the office, it's convenient because you can call the person, get patched through to them, and talk immediately. But if not, then you have to wait for either them to get your voicemail or for their secretary to give them the message. So now what are we moving on to? These new types of communication tools are your smartphones and your social networking sites. So your smartphones, like your iPhones or your Samsungs or whatever you have, actually gives you more instant reach to people. You have your text messaging or your iMessaging, just practically instant. You send your message, they get it, they respond back, you get it immediately. Now, the reason that this is more ideal is people typically always have their cell phones with them. When's the last time you went out without your cell phone? If you leave your house now without your phone, you typically probably turn around and go get it. It's kind of something that we've all learned to really need in life. And with these smartphones, you also have access to the internet, which is really great because instead of having to sit down at a desk and access it through your desktop computer, you have it at the tips of your thumb. It's pretty great. You have your email, your Google accounts, whatever you need. If your boss texts you and says, hey, I need to know this, you can Google it, you can access it through your email, you can get back to him instantly through your phone. The next type of these new communication are social networking sites such as Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Now, the reason these aren't actually catching on as fast is because not everyone has one. Not everybody has a Twitter, not everyone has a Facebook, and not everyone has a LinkedIn. So it's really hard to get everyone that you're trying to reach out to within the same social networking site. Twitter, you can talk about what you're doing, but if the other person doesn't have a Twitter, then it's not going to get to them. Facebook is basically filled up with useless posts by people that you really actually don't care about, and it's hard to keep it all business related. Now, your LinkedIn is more professional, but I found that it's actually one of like the least common types among friends or your colleagues. Like, not everyone's going to have those, so it's really hard to get everyone on the same social networking site. Ted Shadler, who is an analyst for Forrester Research Incorporated, said this quote: I already have this addictive behavior around email. Do I really have to acquire another addictive behavior? So according to Steve Rosenberg, this is one of the reasons that people aren't actually like flocking to these types of communications. So it's a lot harder for people to keep up with 4 different networking sites than it is to just have one email. Granted, you still do have to filter through your emails, but it's still a lot easier to have everyone on email. Everyone has an email address, so that's why it's still being used today as much as it has been. Now, the third thing I'd like to talk about is whether these forms are actually catching on. Basically, everything is evolving. You change with the times or you get left behind. We're still in touch with these forms of traditional communication tools, but we're just doing it through new means. So now, instead of having to be in your office sitting at your computer to check your email, you can do it wherever you're at. If you're out at dinner and you get an email, it alerts your phone. You can respond to that immediately instead of waiting until you're in the office the next morning. Now, you also have your phone for your phone calls, obviously, but you always have your phone with you, like I said. So it's a lot more instant than what it used to be, where people didn't have their mobile phones and you had to actually get in touch with them at the office or have their home phone. Now, I would like to point out that I work at a restaurant where a bunch of businessmen always come in to have their like business meetings at night or during lunch or whatever. And I couldn't honestly tell you the last time that I saw a group of businessmen sit down and not every single one of them pull out their iPhones with their Bluetooth earpiece in and sit there, and while they're discussing business, they're also doing business individually on their phones too. So if that's not saying that things are catching on, I don't know what is. I really do feel like things are actually moving forward and it's starting to pick up a little bit better. So in conclusion, I would like to say that things are changing, things are evolving, people are adapting to this. It has taken a little bit longer, but as time goes on, the new workforce that's coming up are going to be people that have been raised up in this technology age where we're all addicted to our cell phones and our social networking sites. So throughout the years, as we grow older, the business is going to change. Now, Steve Rosenbush concludes his article with a quote that I think sums everything up pretty nicely. He said, "None of this is to suggest that there isn't a place for social communication tools in the workplace, but the outlook for rapid mass adoption might have been dimmed a little bit." I completely agree with this. I feel like everyone thought that it was going to catch on very quickly, but in hindsight, people are really stuck to what they know, and it's hard to make people adapt. But throughout the years, as I said, the workforce is going to be transformed, and we're all going to be using these social networking tools and our iMessaging instead of emails, and who knows, it could actually open up a whole new world of things for us. So again, my name is Taylor Parsons. Thank you for listening.